I went back and forth with filming this episode, but it really just feels like something that needs to be said. I know for me right now, I still don't understand what happened. I'm still trying to process everything that happened in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This is just proof that even though everything feels like it's falling apart right now, that God brings beauty from ashes, that he heals the brokenness. He uses every single thing for his good to allow the opportunity to bring people back to him. Welcome to The Discerning Mother, the podcast for Jesus-loving moms who want to tune out the noise and tune into God's design for motherhood. I'm Brigid, a board-certified women's health coach, holistic health practitioner, birth nerd, and homeschooling mom of 5. I help moms to heal their minds and bodies, trust their instincts, and embrace the beauty of the way God created them. Here we talk about birth, hormones, motherhood, faith, and anything else. Let's go. Welcome back to the Discerning Mother podcast. Today, this episode's going to be tricky. So this is just happening not even a week after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. If you've been not following social media or the news at all, he is a well-known conservative commentator who was assassinated last week. And so people have known him for his strong stance on abortion and for his encouragement of young people to get married and have children. And I have just a personal note. I've been following him since probably 2018. And I still remember actually the first time that I heard of him. My little sister had texted me, I think it was like a clip of him going back and forth out of college. And I remember exactly where I was. I was standing outside of my barn and I looked at it and I was like, who is this guy? Like, this is so cool. So I started following him then and just have always kept up with him. Not necessarily from like a personal life standpoint. I don't follow that stuff, but more of just, I like the debates and listening to his reasons and him try to understand other people and that sort of things. But what I want to do today is I am feeling like God is asking me to use my voice. And I don't really know what that means yet. I'm just feeling really convicted about like needing to do something differently. Again, no idea what that means yet, but I'm here doing something. We'll see if this is the way God wants me to go. And so I wanted to look into a topic that Charlie didn't really talk about too much. He talked a lot about abortion and traditional family values and that sort of thing, but he didn't necessarily talk about, and he talked about motherhood, but not in the context that I'm going to speak about it. But he didn't necessarily talk about birth and motherhood, again, in the way that I'm going to speak about it today. And so I really wanted to touch on those. And just some things that we know Charlie had said is that, so on Fox News, the Ingram angle, he said that having children is more important than having a good career, right? And like you've heard him say this a bunch of times where he urged young people, especially young women, to put family before career. And this is very countercultural. It's very opposite of what everybody else tells us, but it's so good and so necessary to believe this, right? Because this is the way that God designed us. And so that's something that was really hard for me because, again, growing up, I had a mom who worked really hard, she was a great lady, but worked really hard. She was a doctor. And she wouldn't get home sometimes until 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock. And at that point, like, I'm probably going to bed. And so it was just a different way of growing up. And some of those thought patterns of like, I need to make all the money. I need to be the one in charge of the household. That hasn't always been the best in my marriage. And I've seen how whenever I've flipped that role and I've allowed my husband to really like be the one to be the provider and the protector, that he then flourishes. And then I can go back into that receiving mode, which is what women are actually meant to do. So not saying at all that women can't do these things, can't have careers, can't have jobs, because again, it depends on where you live, finances, things like that. It's just a matter of what is the posture of that. And so again, if you have a demanding career, there's going to be a trade-off with that, right? And so it's just a matter of like the choice. And so for my husband and I, we have chosen to live in a relatively low cost of living area so that I do not have to be the one to work. I do this work that I do with women because I love to, and because it helps our family, but it's not necessarily like I'm the provider, right? Okay. And then again, he talked about abortion a lot in terms of like abortion is never justified, even in cases of rape or incest. I totally agree. He clearly elevates marriage, childbearing, and motherhood as central to a woman's vocation, right? And again, totally agree with that. And so what's striking though is that I never really heard him speak much about like the medical system or birth itself. And I know that he has some offshoots of like different podcasts or things like that in Turning Point that kind of touch on some of this more health related stuff. But I just wanted to go into that a little bit more today. So the facts are that the WHO, take it for what it's worth, found that about 1 in 3 women worldwide report mistreatment during childbirth. That's 33% of women. That's a huge number of women. And that can range from verbal abuse to procedures done without consent, without receiving informed consent. And in the US, up to 45% of women report feeling dismissed, ignored, pressured, and so on. And then of those 45%, a large percentage of those, I forget the exact amount, I think it's about 10 to 12%, those actually have clinical PTSD, which is a literal brain injury that comes from not feeling like they're like having something done to them, right? Another staggering stat that's just absurd and so sad is that Black women in particular are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related cases or causes than white women. Like, that's insane. And this is called obstetric violence. And obstetric violence is when medical practices strip women of dignity, bodily autonomy, or of informed consent. And so, again, that's really what I want to speak on today, because again, Charlie spoke so passionately about the value of life, about how we are all made in the image and likeness of God, that we all have dignity. And again, that's just like spurring something inside of me that it's like, I need to get this out because women we have normalized this, and this should not be normal. It should not be normal that up to 50% of women have a traumatic experience for a physiological event. Like, that should not be normal. Right? And so I want to touch on just a few different things, might be somewhat controversial, but welcome here. To pause for a second. Okay, so the medical system, where most women give birth, about 98% give birth inside of the medical system, which the medical system is just hospitals, hospital birth centers, things like that. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. So this is one cog in a much larger machine. And so a world that often works against women, against families, against physiology and the truth of God's design, like, it's just one cog in the greater machine. And so I want you to think about the education system. Education systems tell women and men that their value is measured in salaries, promotions, degrees, right? Not in motherhood itself. Okay. And so this is something that I years ago took a deep dive in whenever we were talking about where we were going to send our children for schooling. And so I started reading and read a book called Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. He was an author and former New York State Teacher of the Year, which is really interesting, and I learned all about the history of the education system, and it'll just blow your mind. Highly recommend reading more about that system. And so again, education system is something that really it's helping to create really great workers, not really great thinkers. And right now, we need really great thinkers. And so this is where I've had to really retrain my own mind, because I was public schooled from K through 12, and then I went on to a very liberal college, and then I went on to a very liberal master's program. And so I've had to really retrain my mind to think about things, not just regurgitate information. And so I'm really good at regurgitating information, still really working on processing and thinking critically about what are my thoughts? Like, what do I actually think about this? Not just here's what everybody else is thinking about it. Then we also have the media and advertising. We're bombarded with, I can't remember how many thousands of pieces of information every day. Hundreds of thousands, probably millions at this point, really. And so much of that advertising talks about independence and career and like consumerism. And it almost paints motherhood as like this burden, or that we need to pause, right? And so that's something that we're always trying to combat as well. And then we also have like politics and policy. And again, I'm not a political person, like a political commentator. I know what I believe, but it's not my wheelhouse to like be a, to be a lobbyist or anything like that. But so often policy and politics reduce women to slogans. So it's either like for a choice or like pro this or anti that or whatever. But it doesn't get to the root of like, we don't have the structural support for families and mothers who want to live out their vocation with dignity, right? And then again, we come back to the medical system where birth is treated like a problem to manage, not this like really beautiful passage that we get to walk through. And so again, all of these, not just one in particular, but all of these are going to be not helpful in terms of helping you become who you are destined to be. These things are all of these systems are in place to help suppress you. And again, I'm not saying that all of these are bad inherently, right? Like there are good people in the education system. There are good people doing media and advertising. There are good politicians sometimes. There are good people in the medical system. And like, thank God that we have each of these different pieces. But again, it comes to the broader sense of, is it for the greater good or is it for the people who are in charge? Right. And so like the medical system, for example, you'll see this mindset show up as like rush timelines that don't respect a woman's natural labor process, interventions that are pushed without full disclosure or alternatives. This culture of like a doctor knows best and that the mother should just do whatever the doctor says. Right. And so again, thank God that we have the medical system whenever we need it, but it should be more of like an acute issue that needs to be fixed by the medical system, not these chronic things. Childbirth is not an issue. Childbirth is a physiological event, and yes, occasionally, sometimes things go wrong in that event. And in that case, when things go wrong, thank God that we do have the medical system. Thank God we have surgeons who are so skilled and that we have these medical advances. But again, they should be acute things, not routine physiological events, right? Okay, don't even get me started on metabolic health. That's a whole nother rabbit hole that I can go down there too. And so, again, it's no surprise when women come out of birth and they're just like, they're not just physically wounded, but they're like shaken to their core. It changes people. And obstetric violence, coercion, lack of informed consent, these are not isolated issues. These are symptoms of a world that has forgotten the dignity of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a person. And so theologically, this makes sense because if the devil wants to destroy the family, he's going to attack the entry point of life itself. And also, God created people. God creates. Women bring that creation to life, literally, right? So the devil therefore hates women because you are bringing God's creation to life. So again, birth then becomes this battleground, not only biologically, but culturally and spiritually. And so the medical system, instead of being a place of refuge and healing and like support when it's actually needed, often like reinforces that attack, right? Okay. And so we need to remember that human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. Like that is clear. We also need to remember that the church as a whole condemns anything that offends human dignity. And that includes coercion and violence, even in these systems, right? And then if you haven't read it, it's beautiful. Definitely read St. JP2's Evangelium Vitae. And in that he wrote, women deserve unconditional respect in their maternity and that society should fully support them, right? So good. And then even just think about the Blessed Mother. Like she said yes to God. She went through childbirth and then this beautiful, like spiritual awakening happened, right? So it's not just biological, it's spiritual. And so we need to affirm both lives matter, the baby and the mother. The way that the baby is born matters as well. And that means that we need to respect the mother, ensure her voice and her body are honored during birth and postpartum as well. And so with this, I want to bring it back to Charlie Kirk because again, this whole episode is sparked by his passing, unfortunately. But Charlie Kirk gave us some really beautiful reminders. One is that family is more important than career. Like full stop, no matter what, no matter who you are. Two, biggest one, children are blessings. I still remember this one video that I saw. I forget what the woman came up and asked him about, but she had her probably 18-month-old strapped to her chest. The baby was like trying to reach out and grab the microphone. The mom's like trying to talk while the baby's grabbing the microphone. And Charlie just stops and goes like what a blessing this is. Like she's a gift from God. And the whole audience like erupts into like chills even now. So children are a blessing. And then we have the last part here is that society that rejects motherhood, rejects womanhood, is a society in decline, right? And so that is already true. That's already happening, unfortunately. So if we truly want a culture of life, then we have to fight not just against abortion, but also against the ways women are silenced. And in this case, in particular, I'm speaking on in the medical system. So birth trauma, lack of informed consent, coercion in hospitals. These are forms of violence. And so Charlie has pointed us back to family and children as gifts. But we also need to remember that birth is also a form of spiritual warfare. The devil wants to keep you small. He hates you. He doesn't want you to love being a woman and being a mother. So women need not only encouragement to become mothers, but also protection, support, and respect when bringing life into the world. Because if we neglect that, we risk praising motherhood in theory while failing mothers in practice. And that's not what God wanted for us. So again, in this time, not even a week after his passing, may we all just discern whatever God is using this time for each of us, whether it be to use your voice, whether it to be to just listen. And may you have courage to do whatever it is God's calling you to. And just continue to please pray. Pray for the Kirk family. Pray for all families. Pray for all women. Just continue to pray. Remember, everything that you do can be a prayer. It doesn't have to be this like beautifully curated prayer time. It can be, that's amazing, but it can also just be, Jesus, I'm putting away the dishes because I was able to feed my family, and thank you. It can be as simple as that. And so again, whatever God's calling you to, may God bless you, and I'll see you next time.